The modern global order relies on a specific architecture: dollar dominance in international trade, naval fleets securing global supply chains, and military installations spanning multiple continents. The United States maintains a tight grip on this system today. But look at this map of North America in 1800. The United States is a narrow strip along the Atlantic seaboard, boxed in by massive British, French, and Spanish empires. It was a highly precarious position for a fragile new government. A common reading of history assumes the early United States spent its first century looking inward, avoiding international politics. The reality is that American leaders were heavily engaged in foreign policy. They simply focused it entirely on their immediate neighborhood. They executed a two-pronged strategy to survive and expand. First, they pursued aggressive continental expansion to acquire territory and build economic mass. Second, they systematically forced European rivals out of the hemisphere entirely. The vast unipolar influence the U.S. projects across the globe today was built directly on this foundation of calculated, aggressive regional conquest that took over a century to complete. This map tracks the sequence of territorial acquisitions that built the modern United States. In 1803, Napoleon needed cash to finance his European wars. The U.S. capitalized on France's vulnerability, purchasing the massive Louisiana territory for $15 million. This single transaction doubled the size of the country and secured absolute control over the vital Mississippi River trade route. Look down here at Florida. At the time, it was held by Spain. The U.S. required this peninsula because southern rivers flowing out of American territory emptied into the Gulf of Mexico through Spanish-controlled land, stunting agricultural trade. Furthermore, Spanish Florida served as a refuge for escaped slaves and displaced Native Americans. General Andrew Jackson launched unauthorized military incursions across the border, capturing Spanish posts. Recognizing their weakened position and inability to defend the territory, Spain officially ceded Florida to the U.S. in 1819. Converting these new southern lands into profitable agricultural acreage required clearing out the people already living there. In 1830, President Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, legalizing the forced expulsion of native populations. The federal government systematically displaced over 60,000 Native Americans from 5 major southeastern tribes. Through warfare and violated treaties, indigenous communities were marched west across the Mississippi River. During the journey now known as the Trail of Tears, roughly a quarter of the Cherokee population died from disease, exposure, and starvation. The rapid accumulation of valuable farmland and the resulting explosion in agricultural wealth relied directly on the violent extraction of indigenous land. By the 1840s, the ideology of manifest destiny drove hundreds of thousands of settlers further west. They poured into Texas and set their sights on the ultimate strategic prize, the fertile lands and harbors of California. When Mexico refused to sell California, President James K. Polk ordered American troops into disputed territory along the Texas border. It was a calculated move to draw fire, allowing Polk to claim American blood was shed on American soil to justify declaring war. After U.S. forces captured Mexico City, the Mexican government capitulated. Under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, Mexico was forced to cede 55% of its pre-war territory to the United States. This massive land transfer, followed by the Gadsden Purchase in 1853, absorbed present-day California, Nevada, Utah, and parts of 4 other states. Within a year, the California gold rush drew hundreds of thousands of settlers to extract the region's mineral wealth, while securing deepwater Pacific ports. Reaching the Pacific Ocean established a 2-ocean footprint. It integrated the West Coast into the national economy and opened direct maritime trade routes to East Asian markets, laying the geographic and financial groundwork for a continental powerhouse. While expanding its borders, the United States also moved to block its global competitors. In 1823, President James Monroe issued a stark diplomatic warning. European powers were no longer permitted to colonize or interfere in the Western Hemisphere. At the time, the U.S. lacked the military capacity to enforce this doctrine. They secretly relied on the British Navy, which had its own economic reasons for keeping other European empires out of the Americas, to act as the de facto enforcer. This table displays the population growth in the Western Hemisphere from 1800 to 1900. While Canada and Mexico experienced modest increases, The United States population exploded from 5 million to nearly 76 million, supercharged by mass immigration and vast economic opportunity. Combined with a massive industrial scale-up, this demographic surge physically shifted the balance of power. By the end of the century, Great Britain recognized it could no longer challenge American dominance in the region and largely withdrew its geopolitical ambitions across the Atlantic. Through relentless territorial conquest and the diplomatic shield of the Monroe Doctrine, the United States successfully neutralized foreign threats and claimed the entire hemisphere as its exclusive domain. The resulting nation was practically invulnerable to outside invasion. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans acted as massive geographic moats, providing what strategists call the stopping power of water. No rival power could easily project a massive army across those distances. Yet the rapid addition of vast new territories surfaced an irreconcilable internal conflict. The nation had to decide whether these new Western states would operate on a northern system of industrial free labor or a southern agrarian economy strictly dependent on slavery. For decades, politicians tried to balance these opposing forces through legislative compromises. But the continuous acquisition of land shattered that fragile equilibrium, dragging the United States into the deadliest conflict in its history. The American Civil War resulted in over 600,000 deaths. The Union victory crushed the secessionist Southern states, legally abolished chattel slavery, and consolidated political power in a newly centralized federal government. The nation that emerged from that crucible controlled an entire continent, secured by two oceans, with a unified federal structure. Securing this homeboard was the prerequisite for everything that followed. It provided the limitless resources and geographic safety required to build an industrial behemoth and eventually dictate the global order.